Hey, so I decided to get dressed up for this one. Um, I decided to wear my little black dress that I've had since before my firstborn was born. So it's older than Alan. It's like a decade or more old. And I don't wear it very often, mostly because of the plunging cleavage because it shows a lot up here and I guess it would show a little less if I didn't have a bra underneath, but I don't feel comfortable wearing things without bras these days. I just I just don't. Um but anyway, so going to talk about Wednesday the series and I don't wear jewelry very often. Like I decided to put a whole bunch of stuff on. I normally only wear this ring on this hand, my right hand, but I wear jewelry a lot more on my left hand. I don't know why. But I decided I found this choker. It's supposed to be like Beauty and the Beast themed. I found this hidden away, and it was from like Hot Topic, years ago. Like I think around when they did the live action remake of Beauty and the Beast. So I was like, you know what? I might as well wear it this one time. Like I don't remember why I got it because I don't typically wear necklaces other than my crystal. But anyway, yeah, and then in the spirit of Wednesday, flipped over my little octopus to the angry face. Um, I'm not gonna lie, I have not watched the original black and white of Addams Family, or original versions. So my introduction to the Addams Family was the 1990s, like most people. Um, but I was super excited to see this series because although I know that they tried to add a little bit more darkness to it in the 90s, it I was ready for a bit more, to see a little bit more gore, a little bit more horror, suspense, murder element that wasn't just as goofy or family friendly. um, and so I was excited, and plus because Tim Burton, come on. But you know what? I was a little sad about a lot of the comments, a lot of the articles I saw before even watching the series because there's so many people who are focusing on like, oh no, Luis Guzman. Oh no, I don't like the way he looks, and oh no, that's not. Why can't they make like Christine Ricci Morticia or? And I was very frustrated because for starters, even though Christine Ricci, yeah, like I loved her as Wednesday Addams when I was growing up. Like I love seeing her as Wednesday because that I thought she did an amazing job. But I never had the Morticia vibes with her. I always had she was her own person. I can't see her doing Morticia in this series. Like I feel like it would be wonderful if she could do her own character, and she did. So I was really happy about that when I actually saw the series. But and then the other thing that made me very sad is how many people were just kind of bashing at Luis Guzman and like body shaming him. Um, I was really upset because I love Luis Guzman. I just anything I've ever seen him in, I enjoyed it, and I thought he was perfect as Gomez. Like when I saw the series, I mean, I was already excited to see the series. I thought I would enjoy it because I'm that kind of person that would look at something for its own merit and not try to compare it or bring it down because I'm like, oh, it's not the same as this. Well, no, it's not going to be the same. It's not. So I should get rid of those expectations, right? Um, but I, for me, honestly, yes, even though the 90s, oh gosh, like now that I'm doing this video, I can't remember his name at the top of my head. The one who did Gomez in the 90s movies. Raul, oh my gosh, like my brain. Any By the time I like actually am done with this, I will probably remember it or put it in the description. But anyway, so a lot of people look at him because he's a bit taller, more exuberant, as his version of the character. And yes, I enjoyed him as Gomez. I love that he embodied the character itself and how he treated Morticia, how he treated his brother, how he treated his children, how he just treated people in general, how he looked at the world and the kind of person he was. So I felt like yes, that actor embodied the character of Gomez. Luis Guzman also embodies the character of Gomez. And I thought it's very unfair that people kept trying to compare him to the other actor. Like, they actually were being more accurate with his height and his physique with Luis Guzman. Like, if you look at the original comics, the pictures of how Gomez is supposed to look, yeah, that's kind of very accurate, actually. Like, Tim Burton really brought that to life. I felt like I was looking from the comic to the screen. Like, it's like the character had come to life physically, you know? But then Luis Guzman, like, he also embodied Gomez. Like, oh my God, it's everything that I would have wanted for Gomez. Like, I'm the kind of person where I haven't had the best, luck with guys in my life. Whether because they're me being dumb, or most of the time is because the guys were horrible and abusive. And you know what? I'm looking for the Gomez to my Morticia. Like, that's really how I look at it, is like, if that's relationship goals, not necessarily the kooky and the weird, or the unusual or anything, which yes, I am. And I also have a dark sense of humor, but just that person who vibes with me, who gets me, who will treat me with respect and love me as as I am, and love my children as they are, and respect and be there for them, and like this kind of mutual, like this equality, so like I look at Morticia and Gomez, and that is relationship goals. And so I just, like, if there's something that I wanted to look for in a man, Gomez is it, So I thought Luis Guzman did an amazing job. And I was very sad seeing all those comments and seeing those articles about how people were like, I'm a fan and I can't believe. No, you're not a fan of Addams Family. You're a fan of a movie where you had this idea that because this actor played this character, that all of a sudden that is the character and that's how the character is supposed to be. No. And I feel like they missed the point of the Addams Family by body shaming Luis Guzman, or by going off on Morticia, going off on any of the characters. I feel like you missed the point. Addams Family, they're unusual. They're not what society deems as normal. And so they're a little bit out there. But you know what? That's the whole point. And they still have a loving family that, yes, they deal with issues, but they deal with it together as a family. And they have the typical, the siblings, Wednesday and Pugsley. Like, I thought in Wednesday, the series, the Netflix series, they did an amazing job of showcasing that, yes, Wednesday is her kind of out there person, and she may be a bit toxic in some areas, especially how she treats some of, her friends and her roommate and all that kind of stuff. But the way that she and Pugsley are is very typical sibling behavior. That's, any sibling will tell you that is, because like there are some people who I saw comments about how she's like, yeah, I don't know about her and Pugsley. That's kind of weird. And I was like, maybe you're an only child. Maybe that's why you don't understand. But no, that's very typical sibling behavior. Actually, it seems pretty mild the way that they are in the Netflix series. I think in the 90s movies, they're a bit more on point with that type of brand, for the Addams Family being the unusual, darker humor kind of side, as well as sibling kind of relationship, versus the Netflix series. Well, of course, they don't have as much Pugsley in this one because this is Wednesday's series and this is her experience at the school, Nevermore. But it's just, yeah, so I was kind of upset by seeing a lot of the comments that were kind of very negative and trying to like bring down certain characters. And this is before the series even came out. And I don't know, maybe I was like, automatically, I'm going to assume the series is way better than what you're projecting, because you seem to have missed the whole point of the Addams Family. Because they're supposed to be the outliers, the unusual, not to mention, that's not like his physique is not why Morticia married him, or she's madly in love with him. Like, they are disgustingly in love, like to the point where everyone's like, oh, please stop with the PDA. And maybe not the PDA side, but I definitely want a love that is very strong like that. And that's goals right there, is to have someone that's kind of in love with you in your version of love. That's the thing too, is that they don't begrudge anyone else their versions of love or how their family is. Addams Family itself, I think, is kind of a more accepting, more loving kind of environment than you see in most areas of society. What they consider the societal norm, or what they try to push as, this is what you should look like, this is what you should do, this is how you should act, this is how you should treat people. Addams Family is the outlier. They're the ones that are outside of that, saying, no, we're going to do us, and we're going to enjoy it, and we are going to be like, it's okay, you can do you as well. Morticia didn't marry Gomez or have kids with him because of his physique. That's not something that Morticia would care about. She would care about him, about him as a person, like his soul. Like they would be like connected in some way, that like this bodily form, like they don't care about that. So that's kind of goals for me too, and I think it goals for a lot of people. But just those commenters on like how he looks, or no, that's not my Gomez. I'm like, not your Gomez? No, of course. And the other one wasn't your Gomez either. You were just going off of whatever society is telling you to go off of. I think you completely missed the point of the Addams Family and their values completely. Okay, now that I've done that whole rant, I'll put on the description, like, okay, just after 11 minutes, then I'll get into the actual series. I loved it. I mean, of course I loved it, but I really enjoyed everything. The dialogue, the way the cinematography, like just, the way everything looked. I mean, of course, yes, it's Tim Burton, but there was a lot of contrast. There was a lot of like diversity in the lighting, the shadowing, the angles. I loved it. I felt like I was there with Wednesday going through Nevermore. It's you feel like you're transported there. And then the characters aren't like just simply boom. I mean, even if you've read or watched a lot of mystery or murder mystery or suspense or thriller kinds of, media, and you could guess like, oh, is it this person that's the killer? Is that person that's the killer? Because, there's killing involved, of course. And so, murder, mayhem, so Wednesday's got to get to the bottom of it. And you can guess like who is, the villain, or rather the killer, the antagonist. But I mean, even if you could, they don't make it obvious. There's a lot of twists and turns, and the characters aren't one-dimensional. Like they have so much involved in them. It's not just a one-liner here, or okay, this is obviously this type of character. No, there are dimensions, there are layers to everyone, and they bring out bits and pieces throughout each episode, but nothing is just boom in your face. And I like that. I like that they are unraveling things, and there is progression from the characters, especially Wednesday. Now, I'm not going to give away like the ending, like, who's the one who's been killing and who's the antagonist or whatever. But Wednesday does go through kind of a transformation. You can tell that she doesn't really get along or vibe with people very easily. She is socially awkward, and not just in the typical societal way, but because of her upbringing, because of her family, because she looks at things in a darker perspective or a unique perspective. She has a hard time connecting with others. And I love the extreme contrast in her roommate, that she is this bright and bubbly and just out there person. There's Wednesday all dark and gloom, literally complete opposites in practically every way. But there is some concession. There is some compromise between the two characters. And even though there's this like hit or miss on how they interact with each other, like how they understand each other, at the same time, you do see that Wednesday does care. She just cares in a different way than what we may be used to, or what society says that she should look like as she cares. But I mean, she's hit or miss. She's learning about interacting with others and bonding with others. Their emotional state, it's not so much that she's not empathetic, it's more that she sees it as unnecessary. She's very logical. She's incredibly smart. She's very attentive, and she also is really competitive, and she really she's like, I've got the bug of trying to solve this mystery and I need to solve it. Like, I need to be validated. I need this to happen. But along the way, she does form bonds. She does start to care a little bit more than the typical for others. She starts to see them as people, maybe not right away. So she does kind of, manipulate a lot. It's definitely a bit toxic on the surface. But I will talk about this one scene at the very end. She does hug her roommate, and like, that's the thing, is that she's been no hugs, no touch throughout all the other episodes since the beginning. She's just like, nope, no. And I mean, if some people are like that, that's fine. Like, you don't want to be touched, you don't want to, connect with people in that way, then that's your boundaries, right? And so Wednesday, she draws that line, says, this is my boundary from the get-go. But after all the events and all the things are happening, her mate is kind of upset and traumatized and hurting, and she really does care about Wednesday. And then, she hugs her, and Wednesday's just kind of like shocked. Oh my gosh, she touched me, even though this is my boundary. But then after like a split second, she's looking at her roommate like she's crying and she's upset, and she hugs her. She just embraces her really tightly. And she just does not want to let go. And that's like a crazy development for Wednesday, that she's connecting to someone in that manner. I think maybe her roommate's like the only one that has that privilege of doing so at this point in time. But because I don't see her really doing it with anyone else. But it's that progression of forming that bond and with these other people, and kind of learning as she goes along, because she's also a teenager. And she does go through the typical teenage kind of moods and learning how to navigate with other teenagers and adults, even if it's not in the typical high school setting. It's at, Nevermore Academy, which is for the odd and unusual, vampires, werewolves, and no faces and sirens. And, you've got like the supernatural, basically. But regardless of the supernatural element, it's still high school. So you've got a lot of drama, you've got a lot of angst, you got a lot of stuff going on. So she's having to navigate all that while also solving this mystery. And then she does form bonds and attachments to people. She does care if someone gets hurt, especially on her behalf. So she did kind of, even though she was manipulative and she kind of used some of those other people in her scheme of trying to solve this mystery, when one of them gets hurt throughout the series, she's very protective of that person. Like, she's there by their bedside. She's trying to, like, she's constantly worried about them. She may not be obvious about it. She has her own way of showing it, but she definitely cares. So that's the other thing too, is that I think that some people might have been worried about how she present emotions. I thought the actress did an amazing job. She did a lot of it with her eyes, having to have like try not to. I wonder how many outtakes there were where she's trying not to smile in certain scenes, because there's some scenes where I laughed. I thought they were hysterical, but she she kept a straight face. Of course, like, she's supposed to keep a straight face. But I wonder if the actress had trouble sometimes, like, keeping a straight face in certain scenes where it's dark humor, but it's still humor. It's hilarious. At least it was hilarious to me. But she was very expressive with her eyes, with her body language. Sometimes if you're not paying attention, you might miss it. It's definitely worth rewatching, especially if you loved it the first time. But it's sometimes trying to find details of like, okay, she reacted in this way, like with these words or with this expression, but is that what she really means? And so I had to go back a couple times, like, rewind a few, like 10, 20 seconds or whatever, and be like, wait, did I read that correctly? Because it's very subtle. A lot of the words, the intonations, like, a lot of it's very subtle. And so it's you have to kind of pay attention in some ways. Now, I also think that it was interesting how there's more of a backstory for her parents, for Morticia and Gomez, because that does present itself in the series as well. Because you get, like from the 90s movies, and then I think I had to read up on it from the other series before that. There's not as much back, like there's stories told by Gomez, Morticia, or you know, the grandmother, or Fester, you know, like there's stories told about Morticia and Gomez when they're younger, but there's not much of a backstory. So this series kind of dives into some of the history of Morticia and Gomez and how they came to be together, and some of what they went through when they were at Nevermore. Um, and it also touches on some very important themes too. Um, that uh that Morticia had been stalked. She had a stalker actually at Nevermore. So that, I mean, I put it before that there's spoilers in here, but so basically she had like a stalker. She had someone who was obsessed with her, and she ended up with Gomez, and this guy wouldn't leave her alone. And she did try to report it, but the town that's near Nevermore, like it's the normies, and they they don't like Nevermore people. They don't like supernatural. They're like, ugh, you know, they're very much the Puritan, like, oh, this is horrifying. But we have to kind of get along with them. But they ignored her. They ignored her reports of, hey, this guy's harassing me. Like he's coming after me. He's obsessed with me, and I don't like it. That there are boundaries and he's crossing them, and they ignored that. Whether it's because she was a woman or because, you know, she was supernatural, probably both. That happens often. That's happened often in the past. It still happens today, where it's like she kind of confronts the current sheriff, like, no, back then, no, I told you how this person was. I told you, like, they uncovered a plot about this guy or whatever, but he was her stalker. He was obsessed with her, and she's telling the sheriff, like, I told you how he was. You didn't want to listen. You didn't want to, you know, do anything about it. You did nothing and allowed this to continue. So she goes off on him. And I'm just like, good, because that happens still today, where whether it's man or woman, whoever it is, whatever, you know, gender or anything, it's just there are people who are harassed and then ignored when they try to report it, or when they try to say, no, my boundary has been crossed. This should not happen. And I enjoyed seeing that. Like, I don't enjoy people being harassed or hurt or stalked or anything, but I enjoy people talking about. I'm glad that it's being talked about, that was present there. That Morticia seems like a kind of person where she can take care of herself, but at the same time, it's like, hey, something wasn't right, and I said something, and you were like, nope, whatever, and that's not okay. And you know what? That might have been one of the reasons. This is speculation on my part, but I think that might be one of the reasons where she started to kind of gravitate towards Gomez, is because Gomez was not like that other guy. That other guy was obsessive in a terrible way, like in a very bad way, to where, you know, he became her stalker at some point. But it's, you know, that guy was toxic, and she's like, no, I don't want to have anything to do with that. And that may have, you know, helped her gravitate towards Gomez. Now, there's another part where, oh my gosh, I was super excited to see Gwendoline Christie as a character in the series. I love her. I love her. Anything she's done. Like, yes, I liked her in Game of Thrones. Really loved her as Lucifer and Sandman. I mean, I'm a big fan of Sandman to begin with. I thought she was perfect as Lucifer. I was like, oh my gosh, this. I mean, there are so many like great actors that could probably pull it off, but I loved her in that. Like, holy cow, she's perfection in that. And I loved her character in this. There's a grudging sort of respect, but, you know, contention between her and Wednesday, because she plays Principal Weems. She's like the principal of the school, and you can see she was angry a bit with Morticia and Gomez at times, and, you know, jealous because, well, another spoiler, she had a thing for Gomez, but then Gomez and Morticia ended up together, and so Weems was jealous that Morticia got Gomez. Like, she's jealous of Morticia, she was also Morticia's roommate. So that's like a whoa, okay. So there's that dynamic, which adds on to my rant earlier of like people trying to body shame Gomez. Like, dude, it doesn't matter what his body is like. He had two chicks after him, like two chicks that were hardcore, like into him, okay? And it had nothing to do with his body. It had everything to do with who he was as a person. I'm telling you, it's not just the whole supernatural aspect. Like, okay, we're a little odd or whatever. No, he like Weems. She kind of acts out a little bit jealously. Jealously. Is that even a word? Um, in some episodes towards Morticia, but she's still professional. Like, I love how Weems is still professional, even though she is jealous of Morticia and what she ended up with Gomez and having a family. But she does, I think Weems definitely considers the school like her family, and she is incredibly protective and very strict about things there because she wants to keep them safe. She's willing to do whatever it takes. Now, sometimes that may be a little outside of the typical law, but she will do it for the school. She cares about that school and wants to keep it open, wants to keep the kids safe, wants to make sure that everyone is okay. And that follows through all of her interactions with other people and with Wednesday. Wednesday is just like, I gotta get to the bottom of this, and you're hiding things and rah, rah, rah. And Weems is just like, like, yeah, of course I am, because I want to protect the school and you're getting in the way. And I do love that she does make some concessions. She does kind of give a little bit into Wednesday. Like, Weems gives a little bit into Wednesday and how Wednesday's like, yes, but, and she presents something that makes it seem like, okay, well, let me get away with this because of this. And Weems caves a little, but she's still like, okay, I'm letting this go. However, and there's strict guidelines here. She does follow through. Weems does follow through. She doesn't just cave completely to Wednesday and be like, oh, okay, I'll let this slide. No, there are warnings involved in this. Like, yes, I'll let this slide. However, and I will be strict about this. And she does follow through. It's not like she just completely gives in. And I do like, though, that here's another part of Wednesday's personality. Like, this is another part of her progression and her bonds forming with others, is that anytime Wednesday gets in trouble or other people get in trouble because of Wednesday's actions or people get hurt or whatever, she immediately is like, takes the blame on herself. She's like, they had nothing to do with it. It was me. Like, every single time. She's like protective of the other people. Like, you shouldn't expel them. You shouldn't get them in trouble. It was me. I manipulated people. I did this, which she did, but she owns up to it. Like, she takes full responsibility for that. Of course, she tries to wheedle her way out of her own, like, trouble that, yes, I take full responsibility that I did this. However, let this slide, please, because of this, and this reason. So she's still trying to manipulate Weems, but she does try to protect other people and make sure that they're not in trouble. So I did enjoy that. She's fiercely protective of others, honestly, Wednesday is, and that shows throughout the series. She may not know how to show it to others in the way that they are used to, but she does show it. And then, of course, Christina Ricci's character, which I didn't recognize her at first in her character as the teacher Thornhill. I definitely, like, it's like my mind recognized her because she's been in so many things. So, like, I recognized her as like, oh, that's Christina Ricci. But it took me a moment because the way that she's acting, her character doesn't seem like her in a way. It's really weird. It's like, yes, that's her, but at the same time, my mind it feels like it's playing tricks on me. That it's her, but it's not her, And that character is really multifaceted and very layered. And because the character itself, Thornhill, presents as such and such, but you know that something's going on underneath the surface, right? The same with a bunch of other characters that, you thought, oh, this character's going to be like this person, like this person's going to be like this way, or they're going to act like this way. It seems pretty obvious the way that they are. But then, again, like, there's an unfolding of their personalities, their actions, how they react in general to things. So it's just this beautiful, like, blooming kind of flower. Like, it's just like we start here, and it starts to bloom and open, and as it opens there's little surprises on each petal. It's amazing. I love it. um so I definitely, I it's worth watching at least once. I mean, if it's something that you'd be interested in. I mean, I personally loved it so much that I've already started rewatching it. um it's been one of the most watched series actually on Netflix, and that's pretty exciting. uh I mean, again, like, I'm not gonna, like, say what the exact ending is, but I do hope, I don't know if they said that they're gonna do a second season. I really hope so, because there's a lot more. There's so much more to this. It's not just that it ends in a kind of a cliffhanger. It's that I feel like there are a lot more characters, a lot more stories that could be told that haven't been told yet. And that, it's like just like a little teaser, a little glimpse throughout each episode. There's little bits here or there. And while all the main characters, what we're supposed to be focused on, in the forefront, even though they progress in various ways, there's a lot of background characters, a lot of background. There's some characters, for instance, that you see some of their story progress and then it stops. Like, you like, okay, well, what happens now with them? Like, there's bits and pieces where, like, okay, here we go, and then it just doesn't talk about it at all. It focuses again on, like, Wednesday and that main story right there. As you're like, what? Wait, what happened to this character? What happened to that background person? What? I need answers. And so I really want a second season. I really want more, because I feel like there is so much more, and I would love to see all the actors return. Um, Especially a certain very tall actor, which I'm not going to say what happens to her character, but I really want her back. I really want her. This cannot be. Yeah. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But I loved all the actors. I loved all like, I loved how the actors portrayed the characters, and I love the setting. I love everything about it, pretty much. So if you haven't seen it, please give it a try. If you've been a fan of the 90s movies or any of the animated, movies since, before this one, please try to suspend any sort of expectations. Like, I get that you may have really loved the original and that was like your thing, but this has its own merit. It is wonderful on its own. The actors did a phenomenal job. The director, of course, like, did a phenomenal job. I feel like, yes, part of my childhood's there, but also it's like it grew up with me. The story progressed with me. It's like, I watched the 90s movies when I was a kid, but now I'm an adult. And so it feels like, here's where this is. Let's move this forward. I do love they put a modern twist on it, where they have modern technology. They have cell phones and, like, Wi-Fi. They have all the stuff that we have here in 2022. So I like that. I like that they made it a bit more modern, so that, teenagers now could look at it and possibly enjoy it. I feel like that's the thing that sometimes people get upset with, is they want it to be stuck in a certain time and they don't want to progress or go forward. And I don't think that is very smart with certain stories. Like, it needs to move forward. It needs to grow with us. If it doesn't, it's very stagnant, and there's nothing more you can give. It's just, this is what it is and we're done. Like, I'm glad that it was presented in the way it was with the Netflix series, because it's like, it's paying homage to what came before in many different ways, not just like the 90s, but also the comics and what the characters' original designs were, and the values from back then, which even way back when it first started, like, the story was, that was still pushing the envelope back then, because people were very conservative. Doesn't seem like a proper word. It seems a bit more than just conservative. Like, they were really kind of strict about things, so it felt like the story couldn't progress the way it could have, like the promise, the potential of it back then. It's like bringing that and what was wanted to where we are now, where we are now comfortable enough that, we're in a society that although we're told we have to look a certain way, we have to act a certain way, we have to do blah 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 a certain way, there's still a lot more people who are more comfortable with coming forward and being themselves without fear of being themselves. And I feel like Wednesday, the series, kind of showcases that as well, is that, hey, yes, we're kind of outsiders, but we should celebrate that this is what we are, and there's nothing to be ashamed of for that. And so I'm glad that it's kind of brought forth to a modern setting where it's more open, more accepting, more tolerant. The characters especially. I think that's the other reason why I was angry with all those commenters and the other people, is because you have folks that are commenting as though it's unacceptable that a character looks a certain way or acts a certain way. And it's like, Gomez, he's a tolerant person. He's accepting and open person. And I felt like Luis Guzman did a phenomenal job with that. I feel like the actor before him did a phenomenal job because they are embodying the character, whatever they may look like. And throughout the series, you see people that kind of have their own internal conflict as well as conflict with, outside forces on accepting who they are, because these are also teenagers. They're still trying to find their way in the world in general, not just as supernaturals, but a lot of the adults, there are some old prejudices and there are some, conflicts between some of the, the adults like Morticia and that, the sheriff, the current sheriff and the current mayor, like, hey, there was this conflict where, like, you had this prejudice against me because of who and what I was. And that, that's probably played a part in you not taking my concerns seriously when I had a stalker. That's just one example. Or the current sheriff in this series having a lot of prejudice against supernaturals for things that happened in the past and trying to learn to get past that, and be a bit more tolerant and accepting. But there, you do see a lot of the supernatural community being like, hey, yes, we have this conflict and yes, this is happening, but we shouldn't be ashamed of who we are. We should be more open, which is something that I don't think the characters could be in media, decades ago. So I am glad that it progressed and that it was able to be in the light for what it really was. That I don't think they could show that back then. So I think that's the problem, is that some people who had those kinds of comments, I feel like they kind of missed the entire point. It's the same way I feel about Star Trek, actually, is that there are a lot of people who watched it in like the 60s and they don't like, this woke agenda or this kind of agenda. And it's like, actually, Gene Roddenberry, like he had a very tolerant, open, and accepting mind. And he was kind of flagged a lot for showing even the amount that he did. And it really was the fans that was able to continue it because society was not accepting of what he was showing back then. So the things that we are able to accept now, that's the kind of society that he was trying to show even back then. So there's nothing new, no crazy agenda. That's what he wanted and just couldn't show properly back then. And as our society progressed, we're able to show more and more of that kind of setting that Roddenberry really wanted. So it's no new agenda. It's the creator himself wanted what we have now, or what we're trying to have now. I feel that same way about the Addams Family, about some of the Munsters even as well. Like the Munsters TV show, I didn't see all the episodes, but I saw some of them, and that had a lot of heartbreaking kind of moments too, where they're the outcasts and they're not seen as the same or equal, because they're different or they're unique or they have a sort of a different worldview, and they're ostracized for it. And there are times in some of those episodes I remember where they're like, yes, we're different, but that doesn't mean we're less than. And so there are lessons in each of those episodes, and that was the same with Star Trek and Roddenberry. I feel that's the same way with the Addams Family. Is that yes, they were different, or they're unique, or you know, a little kooky and crazy, but they aren't less than. Actually, they're a bit more tolerant and accepting because they're seen as different from what the norm is supposed to be. And I feel like a lot of people miss the point of all those series, especially this one. Like I'm serious. Like all the comments I saw from before I even watched this series, you had some really horrible comments, like people being awful about it, about the type of actor playing so and so, or the way that they're presenting this, or you know, they're very frustrated because it wasn't the same as, yeah, that's the point. It's not supposed to be the same. It's supposed to progress like our society is supposed to progress. Like, I think you missed the point. I think if you're being angry and aggressive in this manner towards this, I think you missed the point of it. I don't know that you can really call yourself a fan of the actual embodiment of the Addams Family, of Star Trek. You are missing the point. And so I hope that if you are not like that, if you have no basis of anything to go off of for this series, don't look those comments. Do not look online for, you know, reviews of, no. Form your own opinion. Watch it. Enjoy it or not. You don't have to. I mean, there's some people who didn't like it, that they had nothing against the Addams Family or the characters or even the actors. They're just like, it just wasn't for me. And I'm like, great, cool. That's it. You know, and then they didn't say anything else. And I was like, okay, good. I'm glad that you didn't start going on this rant about like how much you didn't like it because of blah, blah, and nitpicking or whatever. There are some people who are like, yeah, it wasn't for me, but if it's your type of vibe, then go ahead. Just don't try to look online. Don't try to form your own opinion, form your own, you know, idea of it. And if you enjoy it, great. I think it's definitely worth watching. Okay, I've done this long enough, but anyway, I'm about to do a bunch of other videos not wearing this, but probably still the makeup because it takes a while to take off. But yeah, that's my thoughts on Wednesday, the TV series on Netflix. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I thought it had just the right touch of pretty much everything when it comes to suspense and thrills and murder. And yeah, it's kind of like a gothic Nancy Drew in a way, the way that a very toxic, manipulative gothic Nancy Drew. If you're talking about Wednesday and the way that she's trying to solve these mysteries, but yeah, it's fun. It's enjoyable. There is definitely bits of humor here or there, whether you're into dark humor or not, but yeah, they did a phenomenal job. I really hope that there's a season 2, and yeah, just give it a try. And I guess I'll talk to you guys later. So bye.